the one, the only, Ben Sion. Good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, Iyun Sion. And today I want to discuss Pesachim Perek Yud Mishnah Ches. It's a famous halacha, which literally means that you don't have dessert after the Korban Pesach. The Korban Pesach was eaten ala sova, the last part of your meal, right? You ate the Korban Chagiga, you ate the steak from your cow for the main part of your meal, and then you're having the lamb chops, which is from the keves, which is from the sheep, as your dessert, basically ala sova. You're supposed to eat ala sova when you're full. You're not supposed to have dessert after that. Why? The main reason is that you're supposed to have the time of the Korban Pesach in your mouth the entire night, at least for an hour until the Seder is over. You should savor the taste of the Korban Pesach. Anyone who has ever been to dinner and you go out to a fancy steakhouse, you have lamb chops, it feels really good on the way home when you got that taste of the lamb chops, percolating through your system. It feels good. You have that taste in your mouth. It's a really nice taste. It's a taste of luxury, a taste of freedom. And that's really ostensibly what the halacha is. Now, we don't have a Korban Pesach nowadays. We have something called afikomen, right? You steal the afikomen. It's interesting that it's called the afikomen means dessert, right? You're not supposed to have dessert. Now what we do in place of the Korban Pesach, we have matzah. Now, some Rishonim will hold the mitzvah of matzah after the meal is in place of the Korban Pesach, and that's the mitzvah of d'oraisa of matzah. Because we know there's a mitzvah of matzah d'oraisa on the first night of Pesach, whether you have a Korban Pesach or not. Some say, so the Rashbam says, the Rashi says, no, the mitzvah of matzah is during Motzi matzah. So which one is it? And also, why is it called afikomen when afikomen is dessert? I like to say like this, that it's very confusing a little bit, because in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, they had al matzah moram yochlu. You're supposed to eat the Korban Pesach with matzah moram. So the mitzvah of matzah, we also know, even when the Korban Pesach is not around, there's a mitzvah of matzah, Torah kaval chova, right? Only on the first night of Pesach you have to eat matzah, whether there's a Korban Pesach or not. So there's two reasons given for the eating of matzah. One reason given for the eating of matzah, right? Rav Gamliel, we learned, was it yesterday or 2 days yesterday? We learned Rav Gamliel says if you didn't say the reason of their eating matzah on the night of Pesach, you were not yosei mitzvah of Haggadah. What's the reason over there? Because they were nigal of Mitzrayim. They didn't have time. They didn't have time to bake bread, so they have to eat the Korban Pesach. It wasn't because the bread was good to be eaten with the Korban. It tasted good to eat the Korban Pesach, right? Because al matzah moram yochlu can tell you that's the best way, right? You're supposed to have lamb chops, really good. And matzah moram, you have your David Kampara and you have your matzah, which make it taste good. The pita bread goes well with dipping in your trina, and you got the matzah, you got the Korban Pesach, the lamb chops, and you have the David Campari. If you know what David Campari is, a bitter alcoholic drink, goes together well. But that's only in the time of the Korban Pesach. But there's another reason for matzah and for Pesach and for Murr, right? And that's what Rav Gamliel is talking about. Matzahs is not because of derech eretz, it tastes good, right? Korban Pesach, one of the main reasons Korban Pesach tastes good. That's the real reason Korban Pesach. But Rav Gamliel says the reason Korban Pesach, Asher Pasach, the same word that Hashem passed over. So when they left Egypt, right? The year they left Egypt is really the same thing as Achar Chorban Habayis, right? Achar Chorban Habayis is the state of, we're free, but we're also afflicted. We're in Gullus. And when they left Egypt also, they were partially in a state of Gullus when they did these things. They were leaving Gullus. They were in Mitzrayim. So right now we're in Mitzrayim, so to speak. So the Pesach we celebrate nowadays is basically the same thing, right? We have Chova Aleinu, like we left Egypt. That's what really it means. And we have to remember the year they left Egypt is like we celebrate now after the Chorban Habayis. During the Beis HaMikdash was around, right? That's really al matzah moram yochluhu. That's the mitzvah. The mitzvah is derech eretz. The entire mitzvah of matzah and Korban Pesach and Murr is to eat them together. And it tastes good. It's something which tastes good together. It has nothing to do with the Rav Gamliel. Rav Gamliel was talking about nowadays. Rav Gamliel, was after the Korban Habayis. That's true. Or when the Beis HaMikdash was about to be destroyed. So he was talking about the state of Gullus. The state of Gullus is reminiscent. Like you're partially in Egypt, you're leaving Mitzrayim, you're in Gullus. We're trying to get out of Gullus, but we're in a shibud. So that's the idea of Marorim, is because remember, right, the hard work we had to do in Mitzrayim that we still have to do in Gullus. And matzahs, remember that we didn't have time. We were in a rush. We couldn't bake the matzah. And Pesach, that Hashem did a miracle. We were enslaved and He killed all Malchus Bechoros, but we were in Shibud in Mitzrayim. So those three things are Gamliel's talking about is really for nowadays. So even though nowadays matzah b'zman hazeh is d'oraisa, machlokes in the Gemara, matzah b'zman hazeh d'oraisa, that's the idea where the Gemara says of lechem oni. It's called lechem oni. Where lechem oni, the bread of affliction, like Gamliel said, the year of Yetziat Mitzrayim, and nowadays we're in Galus also. We're trying to leave Mitzrayim. So then you have the concept of matzah separate for Gar and Pesach. During the Beis HaMikdash, you're in a zman of cheres, right? The kravas hashchina, or close to the shchina. So we had all the elements. So there, matzah rom yochlu is one mitzvah together, eat them together. But nowadays, which we symbolize by korach, we don't have really that nowadays. Korach is only a zeicher. But nowadays, the mitzvah is to eat the Karan Pesach. We don't have, so you can't eat the Karan Pesach nowadays. Morah, we say, right? Because in Mitzrayim, left Mitzrayim, that was real merirus, because they really actually physical labor. Now it's just more of a mental labor that we have to go through to try to overcome the decadence of this world. So marur is matzah rabbanan. Matzah is d'oraisa, because matzah we can still come in contact with the idea of lechem oni, about bread of affliction, right? Sometimes some people are actually poor. Some people are poor in ruchnius, poor in gashmius, poverty. We understand. So that's the mitzvah. So the whole idea in Maftir Nachar B'Sach is you have to tell about the Korban Pesach. There are cheres. You have lamb chops. You don't have lamb chops. There's no mitzvah. There's no isser of eating something after. Even if you want to say, so I believe really the mitzvah of matzah is motzi matzah, like Rashi says. That's the mitzvah of d'oraisa, motzi matzah. There was no, like I explained, in the time the Mikdash prepares that pras, they had a salad, they had mortar before the matzah. The matzah was eaten with the Karan Pesach. There was no motzi matzah in the time of the Beis HaMikdash. The Seder, as we know it, is only after the Korban Habayis. There was no motzi matzah. But motzi matzah nowadays is the affliction. We're eating it, we're really hungry, we're eating it in a time of affliction. That's what motzi matzah is. It tastes like a crack, it doesn't taste so good, it's affliction. And I don't believe like the Rashba. I believe the matzah after the meal is afikomen. We call it afikomen, right? But the Mishnah says afikomen. It's really our dessert. Basically, I don't believe there should be a halacha of eating something after the matzah, because matzah doesn't taste that good. You don't want to have the taste of matzah in your mouth. That's not really the idea. So you would be able to eat something after. However, we call it afikomen. That's dessert. The way we end the meal is dessert, sort of to remember that it's a zeicher for the Korban Pesach, because Pesach was eating with matzah. We don't have Pesach nowadays. We have matzah nowadays. It's a zeicher, but the concept of motzi matzah is really where the mitzvah of lechem oni is done nowadays. And I don't think there should be an isser to eat anything after. It is called, that's your dessert. This is part of your zeicher, but there's no isser. Ein maftir nachar Pesach hafikomen. I think you would be allowed nowadays to eat after the matzah, eat after the meal, something else if you wanted. That's what I personally would paskin, but I'm not a rabbi. I hope you enjoyed today's share. See you on the next one.